Welcome back to Angry on the Inside, where we talk about real, messy, and sometimes the raunchy side of living with ADHD, especially for women who figured it out later in life. I'm Jessica.
And I'm Jeannine. Today we're tackling the question that every woman who's been diagnosed with ADHD later in life has asked herself. Now what? What do I do with this information? What should I do? Today, something that can feel both like a massive relief and a huge overwhelming question mark. What do you do after you get your ADHD diagnosis? What are you supposed to do with the information, and how are you supposed to move forward?
Right? Because it's not like someone hands you the step-by-step manual and says, here you go. Everything's laid out for you. You're lucky to leave with a little packet of information, maybe a trifold pamphlet. It's confusing. It's overwhelming. We're going to talk through this together.
Let's start with the emotional roller coaster. I know when I got diagnosed, I went through, still going through that cycle of being relieved to being really angry to going through a grieving process. Sometimes all the same afternoon, sometimes in the same minute. It's something that I think is still continuing for me, and it's been 4 years. I think that happens for a lot of women, that continuing cycle of, oh my gosh, I know what it is now, to why the fuck didn't someone figure this out earlier, to, oh my gosh, all my lost opportunities.
It's like suddenly your whole life just makes sense. And you're dealing with this grief because you realize how long it's been. We're all playing on extra hard mode. And even after we get that diagnosis, it takes a long time for our brains to downshift and realize the actual gravity of what's been going on in our lives. That feeling of anger, and maybe some of that is at the systems and the people who missed it for so long.
All of that is totally normal. All those emotions are valid. Your diagnosis doesn't erase your past struggles, and it sure as heck doesn't suddenly make it clear. Like, oh, I have a diagnosis and tomorrow I'm going to wake up and everything's going to be different because I'm going to know how to handle my ADHD. But it does give us a chance to at least move forward differently. I think people expect to just feel happy about finally having an answer, but the truth is it's really complicated.
And to put it in perspective, taking the idea that you have this book and you've been rereading this book your whole life, and it's everything that you've kind of paced your life at, your mile markers, all these things. This book had everything in it that you needed. And then suddenly 30, 40 plus years later, you realize it's been missing all these pages. And that's why nothing makes sense. Everybody else has a book that has all the pages.
You just can't process that, that overnight. Sometimes I feel it might actually take a lifetime to process through all of that. But I love that analogy of having a book, because I used to always joke about where's my owner's manual. But now I realize even if I had been given an owner's manual, there's probably pages missing. Unlike everyone else who seems to have a complete one, it's definitely a journey. Some days you're hopeful, the next you're hopeless. So where do we start?
So we'll start where most of us all start in this journey, right? We start out learning as much as we can about ADHD. We let those emotions settle and we get slightly comfortable. And right when we do, we're like, we need to understand everything. It's key to understanding and accepting that ADHD is a phenotype, and that in other people's perceptions, they might look at it as a brain disorder. It really is somewhere that people can negotiate and they can fight and they can argue, or they can stop and listen and educate each other about it and listen to everyone's different perspectives about what this really is and how it affects those who actually have ADHD.
ADHD can lead to feelings of shame and self-blame. The more you understand it, at least this has helped me, the more I've understood what's actually going on, it's helped me let go of some of those negative emotions, let go of that feeling like I am less than, and just understanding that it's just wired differently. Nothing wrong with that. When I was first diagnosed, I think for like 2 weeks straight, all I did was research ADHD, and I read as much as I possibly could.
I spent a lot of years wondering what was going on. ADHD wasn't really on my radar until my daughter and I started to discuss it. And because she was on TikTok, and everybody can hem and haw or whatever they want about TikTok, but I think it's a great place for the neurodiverse community. And that really is what helped lead me to start to wonder if that's what was going on and being able to check off all those boxes. Because I will tell you, we all go through very similar journeys. A lot of us are very into astrology, horoscopes, emotional tests, all the Cosmo tests, because we're constantly trying to figure ourselves out and understand where we fit in and how we belong. Learning about hypersensitive people, those who are gifted, highly intelligent. Everybody wants to argue that they are their own individual single things. In many ways, they are. But a lot of these paths end up leading us into the neurodiverse community. That's sort of where I started.
Which is so interesting because my daughter was diagnosed about 3 to 4 years before I figured it out. And it was actually in the process of moving and realizing that I was just so disorganized and feeling like my brain, it just doesn't work right. That night, I remember Googling like how to get organized and came on some list and said the last thing on the list was, well, maybe ADHD. I then Googled ADHD and found myself crying for an hour because it was like, oh my God, this is exactly what it is. So it was suddenly just introduced to it, not having any, still thought it was a 7-year-old boy who had too much energy that he couldn't sit down and concentrate. Even with my daughter's diagnosis, it was like number 3 on the list of, other things that were going on for her. For me, once I understood exactly what ADHD was and could see where my symptoms played out, it just helped me really get rid of those feelings of self-doubt and shame, that it wasn't some character flaw or some moral failing, that there was actually a reason why I had some of the struggles that I had and why for others, a lot of that stuff was really easy.
I'd say that the increased awareness is the reason why we're here, right? It helps to dispel common myths and misconceptions, and it lets you gain a clearer understanding of what it is and isn't. There's a lot of great resources online. Chad, ADDA. Be sure to check the links in the show notes. We'll make sure that there's plenty of resources for you.
One of my favorites is Attitude Magazine, and they have a lot of great free webinars that Jess and I joke about. We sign up for all the time and then miss. And I know I'm going to make the dig on TikTok. Just make sure it's not some kid who thinks he knows what ADHD is. But there are obviously some very good resources about ADHD on TikTok, such as Jess.
And with that said, keep in mind, there might be younger people on TikTok who do know what they're talking about. Lots of them list resources and different options. There's going to be things that resonate with you and don't. Don't stop at one. Just continue to find others to talk about their experiences, talk about your own. If you find that vibe with someone, then share, talk. We're here to form community and we're here to share understanding. That's probably one of the most important things all of us can do to help one another.
That's what you and I realized when we met during the coaching program, is to have that support system. I mean, it's just amazing to talk to somebody and they get you. It's almost like you don't have to finish the sentence and they know exactly what you're talking about. But I feel like if I talk to someone who's not neurodivergent, they just look at me like I'm a crazy person, that I don't know what I'm talking about, or I'm just trying to make excuses. If I just be more disciplined, if I just be more organized.
As you learn more about ADHD, you can start to understand how it impacts your life. From there, you can take steps to address the areas that you want to change or build upon.
Some people, maybe they find the biggest impact is on how they focus. Or for others, like myself, it's the time blindness or impulsivity or emotional dysregulation that is a definite symptom of ADHD, but is so often not discussed. As long as you can reflect on your own life and start spotting those patterns and seeing where your symptoms are coming up, where are they impacting your life? Just being able to do that with just curiosity, not judgment.
Taking the time to reflect and really learn to lean in to the attributes of your ADHD and how it's impacting your life can make such a difference and bring such clarity. How does ADHD show up for you? And in the way that it's showing up for you, how can you utilize it to make your life better? You'll end up wanting to take time to see how it has affected personal relationships, workplace challenges, and everyday routines. And at first, many people say, well, I've tried all these things and nothing's ever worked and it's just my ADHD. But again, if it is your ADHD, stop and listen to it. What will work with your ADHD? How do you lean in? How do you show up for your ADHD? It makes a difference in how you show up for your ADHD. Your ADHD will show up for you in life in a positive way.
The goal isn't to fix yourself, because we know you're not broken. It's just about understanding how your brain works and how you can work with it. How do we actually move forward?
So, practical first steps, building your support network. Now, this could be a therapist, a coach, a support group, or even just a friend who gets it.
I know we're coaches, but I would really say if it's something that you can afford or you can find a way to afford, a therapist at the very beginning, I think is so important, because there's just so many emotions that most people need to work through. especially that grief piece, which I know we're going to be talking about later on in a future podcast. But if you can afford a therapist, whether it's online or in person, I really think that's kind of one of the best investments you can make at the beginning of this journey. And then you go to the ADHD coach.
Something good is just to experiment with systems. By now, if you're here with us, you've tried planners and reminders and time blocking and all of these different things. But finding your actual expectations for yourself, learning and understanding realistic expectations for yourself, these are huge. It's almost about how you measure your own self worth. When I say that, I mean we tend to measure our self worth by the amount of work we think we get done, the amount of people we seem to be able to help. That's not a realistic, healthy way of dealing with that many times in the neurodiverse community. That's where Jeannine is coming from. Reach out, find help in community, therapy, coaching. Only you can find your path and your way to get to where you need to be, but they are helpful resources. And if you try one and it doesn't work, keep looking, keep trying. The way you do that is staying in touch with community, because we will hold each other accountable in a way that doesn't hurt each other's feelings. Hey, did you manage to get over there? Did you do that? You're giving them permission to ask you questions like that. You won't get upset because you've given them permissions to say, hey, did you make it to therapy? Hey, did you decide to look into coaching? All of those things set realistic expectations and boundaries and hold us accountable. And, we're going to talk more about that as we go with the steps. Primarily, building your support system. That's our first step. Making sure that we show self-compassion and self-care and self-love as we start to go through this process would be the next step.
We talked a lot about just that group support, the community, a therapist, friends, that type of thing. But and also a medical professional. Maybe it's the person who diagnosed you. Talk with them about options. For a lot of people, medication's super beneficial. For other, you might try something and it doesn't work, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't continue to try other things. Just like we're talking about different systems, to at least talk with your doctor about those options that could help you. Or maybe it's going to be making sure you follow an exercise routine or make changes to your diet or, your sleep hygiene, that type of thing. Talking to medical profession that specializing in ADHD is so important, because I'm sure we could do a whole podcast on how little medical professionals actually know about ADHD, especially when it comes to adults. They are just as naive as a lot of other people. So finding somebody who has a background in ADHD is really important. Reach out to a community and find out who they've been working with or who do they know.
One of the most powerful things after diagnosis is that you get to rewrite your story. But rewriting that story circles back to leaning into your ADHD, learning to understand how it shows up for you, recognizing that because having ADHD is a phenotype, this also means that different things will work for your brain. What works for your brain? Does it mean that you put your books in order of color instead of alphabetical order? Does it mean that you cook all your meals on Monday and you just eat the same meal over and over again, Monday through Friday, because that's what's comfortable for you? What shows up? How does it work for you?
I think that's so important about, moving forward and rewriting your story, writing a new story. You get so trapped in, I think, especially when you feel like it's been such a struggle for you of how things are supposed to be. I grew up in a household, we had specific things you did at specific times in specific ways. And I could never, reach that. And then when I was first diagnosed, I thought, oh, well, now I know. Now I can go. Now I'll be able to reach those. I'll know how to work with my brain and I'll be able to reach those levels of perfection that I've been described to me or expected of me. And realizing, no, you know what? A lot of the things that we believe in or think are the proper way of doing things just really aren't that. They're not important. So my mom probably doesn't want me to run my dishwasher twice, but guess what? If that's what works for me, that's what works for me. And that's what I'll do.
That's true. She might not want to. Of course, she might not want you to turn your thermostat down to like 63 just so that you can have a nice thick blanket on top of you and feel warm and cozy because everything on the outside is cold. All right. Let's change it up a little. Give yourself time to process, permission to feel all the feelings, and grace as you figure it out. Remember that you're not alone. You can find your people.
Like us. That's what we're here for.
Thanks for hanging out with us on Angry on the Inside. If this episode hit home, share it with a friend who might need it. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one.
I don't like that ending. You have to go with ending. Did we say to be kind to your brain? Remember, we need a tagline.
We do need a tagline. I figured you were just trying one out.
I was just reading. That's our tagline. Oh shit, we need a tagline. We keep forgetting to get a tagline.
That should be our tagline. And if anybody's listened to episode 1, you know, sometimes we say fuck. Thanks again for listening.
Like, fuck it. We don't have a tagline. We need to work on that.